So the team was Massive Data. So thanks to all the guys from Massive Data, we worked on the data exchange API. And it will be just a quick breakdown of what we basically did. And then I will try to do a quick live demo of what we did. Let's see if the resolution works out. And then I'm open for any critical questions, because I think the demo will be done not in 5 minutes, but like 2. So yeah, feel free to fill the space. So what was kind of like our idea or objective? We wanted to create a module that facilitates a seamless transfer of large volumes of data. So I think on our day-to-day work, at least in the agency world, you need to move a lot of shit from A to B, and the customers want to make this done within like 2 seconds. So first of all, it's education, and second of all, it's not possible. So we thought about, okay, how can we do this? So team from Volva is now building up the data exchange API in the same breath, already deprecating Link. So we thought about how do we can make it now even bigger or better. We thought about batching. So we now introduced a batching process, optimizing the efficiency and also hopefully scalability in that. So basically what we are doing here, we just created a package, a module. It's, as I already spoilered to Volva, it's easier because it would probably just a few lines in the core, but now we have like a lot of files added extra, which encapsulates everything from the business layer into Z. So trying to follow at least some best practices. And we just basically accept one incoming post call with a huge amount of data. And then we start chunking it down, having smaller batches that can then later on be processed in the queue. So go from like one huge payload, 100,000 records, to just one smaller entity. We try to also reflect the complex entity exchange, so the thing that most recently have been announced or launched even. Yeah, but we will come to this in a second. So we basically accept the big payloads. We extended the routing, so now there's dynamic entity resource name, so it is now available for any kind of dynamic entity that you publish available, and there will be just a batch. So onto the batch we can just send all the data. Yeah. Because we do this asynchronously, you will receive a ticket number back. So you will have a token, which is a SHA-1 encoded unique ID, so it will always be unique. And this unique token you can then check on the status. So we have another endpoint established in the same pattern. So for the resource name and the ticket number, you can receive the status. So you can see how many batches were created, how many are still open. The status code of the response changes depending if there's still something open or if everything is done, even if there's nothing found. So if you try to just brute force yourself through all of the different ticket numbers, feel free to do so, and you will get a 4-4. Yeah, that way we can ensure transparency from all the data that has been sent and will be consumed throughout. So what are our benefits? First of all, we want to reduce the time of importing and the effort, because with the data exchange API, hopefully, we are not fighting too much on like slower local processes anymore. And with batching, we maybe just need a simple, take this one JSON file, throw it against Spryker, and we don't need to care anymore. Hopefully, right? We can also facilitate the queues. So with the queue system, we now have like somewhat of a failover mechanism in place. We can see that we can improve the performance of the entire system just by scaling up the infrastructure, not finding clever ways to maybe parse a file a bit more efficiently. And yeah, due to the fact that it's asynchronously, we are not impedimented by maybe one fucked up product at the very beginning or at the very end. All right, so that's 4 minutes. So if maybe like 40 seconds left for presentation. Let's see. Okay, yeah, we can totally not see anything. Especially because it moved over. So we have Postman here. Let me try to, can we zoom in? Yes, we can. So there's this dynamic entity endpoint for example, tax rates, and sending something to the batch endpoint will just create now, in this case, 3 entries. So if I just submit something here, in the response, we will now receive our task number back. If I now go to our tax rate status and replace the token placeholder here, Let's see, didn't check it if it worked or not. Unauthorized. Okay, because it's also protected, because this is important. Security. By the way, this is how you use the data exchange API for everyone who never did it. And yeah, so there we know it's the text rates resource. This is the ticket number again. We have 3 incoming batches, and currently there are 3 open, so the processing hasn't started yet, because this is something which is currently still on the way. And that's 5 minutes more or less.
Thank you.
Questions?
Nice.
Questions? Get the slide back. Mr. Sommer.
Where does it store the data?
So maybe I should just repeat the questions. Where does it store the data? Which data? You mean the incoming batches? We just go straight for the database. So we take them, throw them in the database, have then basically publishing in place. It was now the quickest solution for now to just take the publishing, and so it will be published to RabbitMQ, and then RabbitMQ has a consumer which is just working on it. But of course you could argue maybe put it to Redis or so, but for the last, let's say, 4 hours that we effectively could work on it. Yeah. Follow-up question, yeah?
What about a really big batch?
What about a really big batch? A really good question. We, of course, try to brute force everything with like a few records. Yeah, try to break it, I would say. Vova is very confident that it will not be broken, and we are just like, let's say, the infrastructure around it to make it batchable, right? So I think as long as you don't exceed the memory limits or the post sizes of like the request limit, I guess you should be good. Okay, comment from Florian, it's not about size, it's about technique. So we have it on tape.
That's highlight from yesterday.
Oh yeah. Julius.
So does it first go to the database and from there then to the RabbitMQ, or it goes directly to the RabbitMQ and then to the database?
We keep track of all the records incoming. So the question was, does it go straight to the database or first to RabbitMQ directly? So we store everything in the database due to the fact that the ticket is persisted, right? So we keep track of the ticket and all the subsequent badges. The benefit, though, is that the open count is basically messages that haven't been yet consumed. How do we reflect this? We don't go to RabbitMQ in the same request. We just check the database. So how many records are still in the database? We kill the not processed messages. And this is basically how you know that it's like still running. So if the open count turns 0, it's completely done. Maybe we can even see that. Let's check on the headers. No, there on the 202, it's accepted, but it's still processing. So it's like status code for it's still running. If it would be 200, then it would be done. So I can emulate this, for example, if you just go to database and kill the entries. So let's see if it really works or if it was just my imagination. Oh, it's internal server error, even better. Never do it.
Unbreakable.
Yeah, unbreakable.
Live demos.
Yeah, must be type of array null return. Yeah, it's it works. Yeah, Wi-Fi. Florian.
If you could choose or decide, would you keep it as individual module, which can be maintained by an open source, like by the community, to keep it updated all the time, or would you prefer having this merged into core?
Definitely being part of the core is important due to the fact the things that we already now build around it is tremendous and unnecessary. Because the way to understand what this object coming in is, and maybe already parsing this as a proper resource, because right now we just take shit in, shit out, kind of, so there's no validation. You could maybe already apply validation while accepting a batch, for example. This is not done yet in the module because we don't have the same functionalities it's in this extension that are part of the core already, right? So I think for the usability point of view, it should go to the core.
Thank you.
Over.
Like from your design, how are you going to report the errors when like asynchronous batch is processed, so how the client gets their errors?
Yeah. So like 2 seconds ago, before there was like still status, we also report logs. So when a message fails, we still kill it from the entry, but you can see it as a log message from your status. So there is no active, it's basically a pull mechanism because asynchronously. So every time you would read a status here, there is every log being logged. So if a message failed, then we will write it to the log and then it's like message with this payload failed, this exception, deal with it. But you can also tell us your email and we send you a mail. So in future, every failure goes to a Vova.
Spryker.com.
Don't contact us, we contact you. I have another question, or is the same? Yeah.
Okay.
Dennis?
So I have a question regarding the impact and value. So how much money are you going to save for your team and for others with this solution?
To be honest, I think we tried, especially like with other examples, connecting ERP system directly now to Spryker with the data exchange. And there was a lot of, let's say, huddle needed to be done in like those middleware solutions. So we assume that this process of like then looping through and then waiting and having money on a process base or like a SaaS solution, which keeps running because it needs to process this for like 4 hours or 6 hours, because this is how long it takes to run through. So that's, I would say, the biggest money impact or financial impact, because we can offload this to Spryker because it can be run in Spryker, right? The solution is running anyways. So from a monetary value, I think it depends on the solutions that you pick. So for example, Lobster, which is a other middleware solution, I think is not charging by the hour or by the minute, but maybe others are, right? So that's the biggest impact, releasing time and money from middlewares and lifting it onto solutions that are already running.
So it's basically it's a composite. It's on one side it's a service time of a third-party service, on the other time it's implementation or application of this functionality in the third-party middleware, and the third bucket it's actually implementation on Spryker in the adapter to simulate such behavior. You
will probably not go away or get away with like having somewhere the place to map ERP data or incoming data into Spryker or whatever kind of format, even though the data exchange maybe can be closely configured, but you still will find absurd data structures that are not the perfect match. So somewhere you need to still do that, but then you don't need to spend time on figuring out how to loop, how to do it efficiently, how to maybe chunk it, how to maybe keep track of stuff, right? But because then you just like, once you did the formatting, just throw everything at Spryker and it's done. So that's at least the idea.
Makes sense. One technical question then on top of that. Do you have any coupling of your current database solution to the transactional database, or it can be decoupled to a separate database easily?
It's currently just relying on Propel and Propel behavior for sending stuff to RabbitMQ with the event behavior. So like that's the only coupling that we have, because this was like the automation process that we already spoke right now. If you set up Propel with a RabbitMQ adapter, it of course can be also offloaded.
Yeah, so right now you use Public Synchronize, and also it then implies the dependency that Public Synchronize has to the transactional database today, right?
Yeah.
So why I'm asking that, because typically the write-in access of a transactional database is the only the biggest bottleneck that you have in commerce system, right? It's hardly scalable. It has limitations. It's only vertically scalable, only with a downtime and stuff, right? And wiring and data importer as an additional write-in access to your database, it also will get the VOps or IOPS from transactional data. Like, for example, that also means that you will decrease the number of orders that might be processed through your system because you're taking it for writing the data import. It's not like I see it's not a design really flow, but it's currently dependency flow that might appear that we would need to resolve if we go further. Yeah, like you could also try to skip it and maybe directly go for, let's say, pushing stuff to RabbitMQ. Yeah. But I think you still need to have like one very persistent topic, which would be like the batch and the ticket itself, right? So to keep track of it, when did it came in, when did we completed it, how many parts were there, etc., etc. Okay, makes sense.
I think I saw one other question, or are we done? Everything answered?
Yeah,
John?
the possibility to extend it in the back office for admins to see a report, I mean a table where I can maybe set the date when I want those batches to be processed, or pre-launch the batch if something failed. Could it be possible to implement it?
So due to the fact that we don't store any history, I think rerunning might be difficult.
Okay.
But like we had it on the board as like a GUI thing to like see it. So not just have it like using Postman, but like seeing it like in the back office directly, maybe under data exchange, having like the status, which batches are currently processing, what were the last ones, what were maybe the logs. But of course, you can think about maybe extending it, blocking certain resources, right? Because we are currently picking up messages that have a resource association, like tax rates. And you could maybe say, okay, we want to block tax rates up until, I don't know, midnight, because it's not important to run them up until midnight, for example, or products, which just is a slight extension on the event listener, which is basically picking up the message right now.
Okay.
But then you're still like filling up a queue which you want to maybe process, right? And then maybe you get stuck there, but yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering about, I mean, the reports that you would have, for example, how many records were imported, if I have to relaunch the batch, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If we keep the historic records of the batch table.
Like, we could tell you what's fucked up, because we would log the ones that fail. And then you can, so if something went through, you have a count of like, okay, 3 messages came in. So, 3 messages were done. If nothing's in the logs, right, it's very obvious. So if something is in the logs for those 3 messages, and maybe even 3 messages, then nothing went in. But yeah, it's not yet super human friendly, but you can get there if you want.
Thank you, Team Massive Data.